The wedding hall froze in stunned silence as two little boys sprinted down the aisle, their small voices echoing across the marble floor. "Mom!" they shouted, clutching the hem of Elena's gown. Guests gasped, turned to stare at the billionaire groom, Graham Whitaker, who stood frozen at the altar. His bride, Vivian Park, blinked in shock, her carefully painted smile crumbling. Whispers spread like wildfire. Whose children are those? Why are they calling her mom? Cameras flashed, capturing every angle. In that instant, Graham's perfect empire began to collapse, because secrets he thought buried forever had finally walked into the light. Before we dive into this unforgettable story, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with friends, and drop your thoughts in the comment below. Every twist and turn will leave you speechless. And you'll want to be here for more stories just like this one. Are you ready to find out how love, betrayal, secrets, and shocking revelations tore apart a billionaire's dream wedding? Then stay tuned until the very end, because what happens next will break hearts and spark debates you'll never forget. Let's begin this journey together right now. Elena Carter never thought her path would cross with someone like Graham Whitaker. She was a rising medical researcher, known for her fierce intellect and quiet compassion. Graham, on the other hand, was a charming tech prodigy who had already founded Whitaker Quantum in San Francisco. Their worlds collided at a conference in New York City, where his bold keynote speech captivated the audience. But it was Elena's thoughtful question afterward that caught Graham's attention. That moment sparked a conversation that carried late into the night, blending science, dreams, and subtle sparks of romance neither could deny. Their romance unfolded quickly, like pages turning in a novel too captivating to pause. Graham sent flowers to Boston, where Elena was finishing a groundbreaking study, and Elena found herself traveling west whenever her schedule allowed. Soon, late-night phone calls became flights, and flights became weekends spent walking hand-in-hand through San Francisco's Marina District. Elena admired his ambition, while Graham was drawn to her humility. Friends whispered about opposites attracting, but to them, it felt like balance. They didn't just love each other's brilliance. They found peace in one another's company, even amidst chaotic careers. When Graham proposed under the glowing lights of Golden Gate Park, Elena felt her life shift permanently. The proposal wasn't extravagant, just a simple ring, a picnic blanket, and his trembling words, "I can't imagine building this future without you." She said yes, her eyes glistening with tears. Soon after, headlines flashed, "Tech visionary marries brilliant scientist." Their wedding was held in Napa Valley, surrounded by vineyards and California sunshine. It was a kind of fairy tale Americans adored, a marriage of intellect, ambition, and romance. Elena felt as though she had stepped into a dream she'd never dared imagine. Marriage only deepened their bond. Elena continued her medical research, focusing on making treatments more accessible, while Graham's company rose into Silicon Valley's elite. They were celebrated as a power couple of innovation, appearing on magazine covers and attending glamorous galas. Yet behind the glitz, their life at home felt warm and grounded. They bought a modern home overlooking the bay, where Elena grew a garden and Graham built a small study. At night, they laughed over takeout dinners, holding each other close. For Elena, it wasn't the headlines that mattered. It was the quiet moments of love. The true highlight of their marriage came with the birth of their daughter, Ava. From the moment Elena held her, tiny fingers curled around hers. She felt her world expand beyond anything research or career could offer. Graham was proud, announcing her arrival with the same excitement he once reserved for product launches. Their home echoed with laughter, lullabies, and sleepless nights filled with soft whispers of love. For a time, everything felt perfect. Ava became the symbol of their unity, a reminder that together they could build more than empires. They could build a family rooted in devotion. As Ava grew into a playful toddler, Elena and Graham seemed unstoppable. Photos of them at conferences with Ava in her stroller made headlines. The modern American family, blending ambition and parenthood. Elena balanced research with motherhood gracefully, often bringing Ava to her lab, while Graham proudly showed off family photos at board meetings. Their friends envied the harmony, believing they had discovered the secret to having it all. Yet beneath the picture-perfect smiles, cracks were beginning to form. Subtle at first, like faint lines on glass. Those closest to Elena noticed her eyes sometimes carried quiet exhaustion. For Graham, success became a hunger that was never satisfied. Each investor demanded more. Each breakthrough required the next one. Whitaker Quantum was no longer a small company. It was an empire, and he its king. Long hours stretched into late nights at the office, missed dinners into forgotten anniversaries. Elena tried to understand, but as she rocked Ava to sleep alone, resentment quietly bloomed. She wanted Graham present as a husband and father, not just as a headline-making CEO. "Your company can't love you back," she whispered one night into the dark, words he never heard. Elena's focus shifted more toward her research in Ava, while Graham's eyes remained fixed on global expansion. They still loved each other, but conversations turned into debates. His voice sharp about profits, hers pleading about purpose. She believed technology should save lives, while he argued it must be protected and monetized. Their arguments left both drained, retreating into silence rather than reconciliation. Elena missed a man who once sent her flowers across the country. Graham missed a woman who looked at him with admiration instead of disappointment. The distance between them widened, though neither wanted to admit it. The tension reached its peak during a gala in New York. Elena had prepared a heartfelt speech about the importance of using innovation to help hospitals in underfunded communities. When she finished, Graham stepped up and announced a new partnership, one that prioritized licensing profits over accessibility. The contrast was stark, and the evening ended with Elena quietly holding Ava while Graham defended his decision to reporters. That night in their hotel room, silence hung like a wall. Elena knew then their visions of the future were no longer aligned, and misaligned visions had begun to break their love. At home in Boston weeks later, Elena stared at Ava playing with building blocks, wondering what example she was setting. Could she teach her daughter about love if she stayed in a marriage that no longer felt whole? Graham returned late that evening, briefcase in hand, eyes already on his phone. They barely exchanged words before bed. Lying awake, Elena realized she felt lonelier inside the marriage than she had ever felt before it. Her heart ached, but clarity struck. She could not raise Ava in a home drowning in silence. Filing for divorce became her only choice. The divorce papers sat on the kitchen counter like an unspoken storm. Elena had signed them, her hand trembling, her heart breaking with each stroke of the pen. When Graham finally noticed them, his face paled, then hardened. "So this is how it ends?" he asked quietly. Elena's voice shook as she replied, "I can't keep living this way, Graham. You've already chosen your empire. I won't let Ava grow up watching us fall apart." Graham stared at her, jaw tight, but said nothing more. That silence echoed louder than any argument they had ever endured together. The weeks that followed blurred into lawyers' offices, custody agreements, and endless tension. Elena and Graham remained polite in front of Ava, who was only 3 and too young to fully understand, but old enough to notice when her father no longer tucked her in at night. Elena carried guilt with every breath, yet she believed leaving was the only path toward peace. Graham buried himself deeper into work, attending board meetings with the same intensity he once gave to their marriage. Their once fiery arguments had cooled into icy silence. Love had become irreparably fractured by ambition. Graham's friends urged him to fight harder for the marriage, but his pride refused. He convinced himself Elena had given up too quickly, even though deep down he knew her decision reflected years of neglect. At work, he performed flawlessly, masking his personal collapse behind presentations and contracts. Investors never saw the sleepless nights or the whiskey bottles emptied in his Napa Valley study. Elena, meanwhile, took Ava to Boston, building a quieter life. She continued her medical research, creating a world where Ava could thrive. She no longer wanted headlines, just laughter, stability, and love for her daughter. Ava adjusted slowly to life with one parent most of the time. She asked questions Elena struggled to answer. "Why doesn't Daddy eat dinner with us anymore? Why can't he come tuck me in?" Elena would hold her close, whispering gentle reassurances, even as her own heart broke. Graham visited when word allowed, but those visits grew shorter and less frequent. His empire consumed him entirely. At school, Ava drew pictures of her family, sometimes all together, sometimes just her and her mom. The absence of her father cast a quiet shadow over her innocent smile, one Elena noticed daily. Despite the pain, Elena refused to crumble. She rented a cozy townhouse in Boston, filling it with warmth. Ava's laughter echoed through the halls, and Elena found solace in bedtime stories and Saturday mornings spent baking cookies together. Professionally, she thrived, gaining recognition for her work in healthcare technology. Financially stable and emotionally resilient, she built a life where Ava never felt deprived. Yet at night, when Ava was asleep, Elena stared at old photographs, smiling faces from another life. Love still lingered in her memories, but so did the sharp reminder that ambition had cost him everything. One chilly autumn morning, months after the divorce, Elena felt unwell. She brushed it off as stress until the nausea persisted. A doctor's visit revealed what she least expected. She was pregnant. Shock rippled through her. How could she have missed the signs? It had been so early during the divorce that she hadn't known. Tears welled as she left the clinic. Her hand pressed protectively over her stomach. 2 lives were growing inside her. The timing felt cruel, yet miraculous. The father of her children was gone, and she faced motherhood again. But this time, she would do it alone. Elena chose silence. She didn't call Graham, didn't write, didn't reveal her secret. If he couldn't fight for me, why would he fight for children he doesn't even know about? She whispered one night, her hand resting on her growing belly. Pride mixed with pain, but so did determination. She promised herself Ava and the babies would have everything they needed: love, stability, and dignity. She prepared the nursery alone, painted soft blue walls, and bought 3 small cribs. While Graham chased profits, Elena was quietly building something far greater: a home where her children would feel cherished. Months passed, and Elena's pregnancy became more challenging than she expected. Balancing research, Ava's needs, and the weight of twins tested her strength. Friends stepped in, neighbors offered support, and slowly a village surrounded her. Graham remained oblivious, appearing only occasionally to visit Ava. Each time he left, Elena bit her tongue, resisting the urge to reveal the truth. Her silence was a revenge. It was survival. She wanted no part of his empire's shadows. Instead, she found comfort in planning small joys: Ava's 4th birthday party, family dinners at home, lullabies sung softly while feeling the twins kick against her ribs. The day finally arrived on a rainy spring morning. Elena gave birth to 2 healthy boys, Noah and Nathan, holding them in her arms, alongside Ava, who kissed their foreheads gently. Elena felt complete. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but they weren't just from exhaustion. They were from gratitude. These children symbolized resilience, born from heartbreak yet bringing new purpose. The delivery room echoed with tiny cries and laughter. "We'll be okay," Elena whispered to them. At that moment, she wasn't thinking about Graham or the empire he built. Her world was here. 3 children, each heartbeat reminding her she wasn't alone. Life shifted again, but this time Elena faced it with strength. The townhouse became a home for 3 little ones, filled with warmth and laughter. Ava adored her new brothers, helping with bottles and bedtime stories. Elena returned to work gradually, her reputation ensuring financial security. Friends marveled at her resilience, calling her an inspiration. She never once reached out to Graham. For her, the past was closed. He had chosen his empire, and she had chosen her children. Little did she know, fate was preparing a moment when those 2 worlds, carefully kept apart, would collide in the most public way. The years passed gently in Boston. Elena's home echoed with the sounds of childhood, Ava's laughter mixing with the playful cries of Noah and Nathan. Her days balanced research at the hospital with the chaos of 3 children under one roof. Nights were filled with lullabies and whispered promises of love. She rarely thought of Graham, except when Ava asked innocent questions. "Does Daddy know about the boys?" Elena would smile softly, avoiding the truth. She wanted her children to grow up in peace, untouched by the shadows of empire and ambition that once consumed their father's heart. Meanwhile, across the country in California, Graham's life accelerated at full speed. Whitaker Quantum expanded internationally, contracts piling higher than his conscience. On the outside, he appeared unstoppable, a billionaire with the world at his fingertips. Yet deep down, he sometimes stared at family photos of Ava, wondering how she was growing up without him. He told himself Elena had made her choice, and he had no reason to look back. His board praised his vision. Investors admired his brilliance. But behind closed doors, his mansion in Napa Valley echoed with emptiness. Success had never felt so hollow. Ava grew into a bright, thoughtful 7-year-old, protective of her younger brothers. She often helped Elena with bedtime routines, reading them stories when work kept her mother late. Ava's teachers praised her maturity, though they noticed a longing in her eyes whenever other children mentioned their fathers. One evening, she whispered to Elena, "Mom, will Daddy ever come live with us again?" Elena's heart ached, but she answered gently, "No, sweetie, Daddy has his own life now." Ava nodded, hugging her brothers tightly. In that moment, Elena knew Ava carried questions her father could one day answer. In San Francisco, Graham attended a gala where he met Vivian Park, a striking venture capitalist known for her sharp mind and sharper ambition. Their connection wasn't fiery passion. It was calculated partnership. She saw in him a chance to expand her influence, while he saw in her the respectability and status that could stabilize his empire. To the world, they appeared as a perfect match. To Graham, it felt like forward motion, an escape from loneliness. To Vivian, it was strategy. Marrying into Whitaker Quantum meant cementing her power in Silicon Valley's elite circles. Vivian played her role with precision. She charmed Graham's investors, complimented his vision, and stood proudly at his side during press conferences. Behind the scenes, she took careful inventory of his empire, assessing weaknesses and opportunities. To Graham, her attention felt like admiration, though in truth it was calculation. Still, he enjoyed the illusion of companionship. He told himself this marriage would be different. Clean, simple, without the messy emotions that had once unraveled his life with Elena. What he didn't realize was that his attempt to rewrite love as business would end in disaster on the most public stage. Elena built her life with quiet dignity, while Graham prepared to marry Vivian in San Francisco. Invitations were sent, headlines buzzed with anticipation. Billionaire CEO to wed venture capitalist. Ava heard whispers from classmates and eventually asked, "Mom, is Daddy really getting married?" Elena answered carefully, "Yes, but that doesn't change how much I love you." Ava's face tightened, questions swirling behind her young eyes. Elena wondered what would happen if their carefully separated worlds collided. She never intended to attend Graham's wedding, but fate and a cunning invitation would pull her back into a life she thought she left behind. Vivian, eager to secure her dominance, decided Elena should be present at the wedding. Outwardly, she claimed it was for Ava's sake, to keep the family civil. In truth, it was arrogance. She wanted Elena to see who had replaced her, who now wore the ring Graham once gave. The invitation arrived neatly in the mail, embossed and expensive. Elena stared at it for a long time, torn between refusing and shielding Ava from curiosity. Ultimately, she chose dignity. If she attended, it wouldn't be for Vivian or Graham. It would be for her children, to show them strength. When Ava overheard Elena discussing the wedding with a friend, her excitement surprised them both. "Can I go?" "I want to see Daddy," she said innocently. Elena hesitated but nodded. "If we go, we'll go together." In that moment, Elena realized she could no longer protect her children from their father's world forever. Perhaps fate intended this confrontation. She packed carefully, dressing Ava in a soft blue dress, Noah and Nathan in matching suits. The boys didn't understand much beyond adventure, but Ava's sense of gravity. Elena braced herself, knowing this journey would change all their lives. San Francisco glittered with anticipation as wedding preparations filled luxury hotels and headlines. Guests arrived in limousines. Photographers camped outside a cathedral chosen for grandeur. Inside, Vivian rehearsed her smile while Graham adjusted his cufflinks, distracted by memories he couldn't shake. He thought of Ava, her laugh, her eyes, her absence. He never once imagined Elena might attend, let alone with secrets in tow. Outside, Elena guided her children to the bustling streets, her heart steady but heavy. The moment she stepped inside, whispers would ignite, and Graham's carefully constructed world would finally face its reckoning. On the morning of the wedding, Elena stood before the mirror in their hotel room, smoothing her dress while her children waited. Ava asked quietly, "Mom, are you nervous?" Elena smiled gently. "A little, but sometimes courage means walking into places that scare us." Noah tugged at her hand. Nathan giggled beside him, unaware of the storm awaiting them. Elena drew a deep breath. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. As they stepped out the door, the weight of years pressed upon her shoulders. Today, secrets would no longer be hidden. Today, everything would come to light. The cathedral in San Francisco was adorned with white roses and golden drapes, every detail curated to perfection. Guests buzzed with anticipation, snapping photos of the lavish displays. Vivian stood in her dressing room, surrounded by bridesmaids who whispered praise. Yet beneath her smile, a current of anxiety churned. She wanted control, to showcase victory over Elena. She'll see what real success looks like, Vivian told herself in the mirror. Little did she know, her invitation would unleash chaos. Outside, Elena held Ava's hand tightly, Noah and Nathan skipping ahead. Unaware their innocence was about to shatter illusions, Graham adjusted his tie nervously, though he couldn't explain why. He had built his life on certainty, calculations, and flawless strategies. Yet today, an ache gnawed at him. He thought of Ava, wondering if she'd ever forgive him for being absent so long. A part of him still longed for the life he'd lost with Elena, though pride had buried those feelings. His groomsmen clapped him on the back, praising his new beginning. But Graham's heart was unsettled. Somewhere deep inside, he sensed the past wasn't finished with him, and today's vows would come with a price. As guests filled the pews, Elena entered quietly with her children. Murmurs rippled instantly. People recognized her. Some whispered in awe of her grace. Others in shock she had accepted the invitation. Ava clutched Elena's hand, eyes scanning the decorated hall. Noah and Nathan toddled ahead in matching suits, drawing smiles from strangers who thought they were adorable twins. No one yet realized the connection, though whispers rose. "Who are those boys?" Elena held her head high, determined not to flinch. She wasn't here for Graham or Vivian. She was here to walk in truth, no matter the cost. Vivian spotted Elena entering and smirked triumphantly. "Good," she whispered to her maid of honor. "Let her watch me take what's hers." She believed the sight of Elena in the crowd would fuel her victory. Her gown shimmered under the lights, every detail crafted for spectacle. Guests snapped photos, dazzled by the display. Vivian's arrogance blinded her to the storm brewing only steps away. She didn't know that Elena had brought not just presence, but revelation. The same revelation that would undo her carefully planned humiliation. In inviting Elena, she had unknowingly invited the destruction of her own wedding. The organ swelled, and all eyes turned as Vivian began her walk down the aisle. Graham stood tall, though a flicker of unease clouded his expression. Cameras flashed, recording every second for society pages. Guests smiled, captivated by the spectacle. Yet in the back rows, Ava tugged at Elena's arm. "Mom, when do we see Daddy?" she whispered. Elena squeezed her daughter's hand, bracing for what was about to happen. Noah and Nathan, restless, wiggled free from Elena's grasp. Before she could stop them, they giggled and ran down the aisle, their voices rising over music with one word. "Mom!" The word echoed to the cathedral like a thunderclap. Guests gasped, turned to stare at the little boys in matching suits. Their identical faces carried the same sharp jawline and eyes as the groom at the altar. Vivian froze mid-step, her confident stride faltering. Graham's world tilted as his gaze locked onto the twins. His heart thudded violently, disbelief choking him. "No!" he whispered under his breath. The organist fumbled, notes crashing into silence. Murmurs erupted. They looked just like him. Are they his? Cameras flashed wildly, capturing the moment truth shattered the illusion of perfection. Chaos unleashed. Vivian turned slowly, her eyes narrowing at Graham. "What is this?" she hissed, her voice trembling. Guests leaned closer, hungry for drama. Graham, pale and stunned, couldn't form words. He stared at the twins, his mind racing through timelines, memories, impossibilities. Elena stepped forward, Ava clutching her hand tightly, her voice steady. "These are Noah and Nathan," she said clearly, her words echoing in the hushed cathedral. "Your sons, Graham." Gasps filled the air, louder than the organ's music had ever been. Vivian's face drained of color, humiliation flooding her expression. The empire Graham built trembled on fragile ground. Vivian's composure cracked. "You hid this from me?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "You never told me you had children. 2 more children." Graham stammered, his mouth dry. I didn't know." The crowd erupted, whispers swirling like wildfire. Some guests raised phones higher, recording every painful second. Elena's eyes were calm, her dignity unshaken. "Of course you didn't," she replied softly. "You were too busy building your empire to notice what you left behind." Noah and Nathan clung to her legs, their innocence contrasting with the chaos surrounding them. The moment was no longer about vows. It was about truth. Vivian's fury exploded. "You humiliated me. You let me stand here, believing I was marrying a man who was honest. Instead, you're a liar." She threw her bouquet to the floor, her voice rising with every word. "How dare you keep something this big a secret? How dare you make me look like a fool in front of the world?" With that, she turned sharply, her gown sweeping behind her as she stormed out of the cathedral. The crowd gasped again, scandal unfolding in real time. Graham reached for her, but she vanished, leaving silence and shame behind. Graham stood frozen at the altar, staring at Elena and the children. His bride had walked away. His guests were whispering, and the cameras captured every angle of his downfall. His hands shook as he reached forward, whispering, "Elena, is it true? Are they really mine?" Elena's gaze was unflinching. "They are yours, Graham. They always were. But you never gave me reason to tell you. You chose ambition over family." Tears welled in his eyes as the weight of lost years crushed him. For the first time, the billionaire who built an empire felt powerless and small. The cathedral buzzed with restless energy. Some guests whispered nervously. Others lifted phones higher, eager to broadcast the scandal. Graham stood trembling, his eyes fixed on the twins as though the floor beneath him had vanished. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, voice cracking. Elena stepped forward, calm and composed, her children at her side. "Because when I left, I didn't even know. By the time I did, you had already shown me where your heart truly was. Your empire, not us." Gasps echoed again. Graham's chest tightened, regret clawing at him with every word she spoke. Graham's voice shook as he pleaded, "Elena, please, I would have been there. I would have—" She interrupted, eyes cold but sad. "You weren't there when Ava needed you. Do you remember her birthdays? Her first steps? Her tears when you didn't show? You were too busy chasing investors to notice your daughter's heartbreaking." Ava looked up, her eyes shimmering with hurt, and whispered softly, "Daddy, you missed everything." Her voice pierced him deeper than Elena's words ever could. The weight of all his choices crushed him, leaving his grand empire meaningless compared to his children's pain. Vivian's absence left a void more deafening than her presence. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some leaving, others lingering to witness the collapse. Graham sank to one knee, not out of romance, but defeat. "Elena, please, let me make this right. Let me be their father now. I'll change, I swear." Tears glistened in his eyes, desperation cracking the billionaire's mask. Elena shook her head slowly, her resolve unshaken. "No, Graham, fatherhood isn't a choice you make at your convenience. It's something you live every day, and you chose your empire every single time. These children are my world now." Silence before the final blow. The weight of Elena's words left the crowd stunned. Even those who admired Graham whispered about the cold truth revealed before their eyes. His mother, seated near the front, covered her face in shame. A groomsman muttered, "He's finished." Graham tried to reach for Noah, but the boy clung tightly to Elena's leg. his small hands trembling. Nathan buried his face in her gown. Ava stood tall beside her mother, her expression filled with both pain and quiet strength. Graham realized he wasn't just losing Elena, he was losing the chance to be the father his children desperately needed. Graham's voice dropped, nearly a whisper. I thought building this empire would give us everything. I thought success could keep us together. Elena's expression softened briefly, but her tone remained firm. All I ever wanted was your presence, not your empire. But you couldn't see that until it was too late. Guests exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement. The image of the powerful CEO, once untouchable, had shattered completely. He was no longer a titan of Silicon Valley, but a broken man begging for the one thing money couldn't buy. Time with the children he never knew existed. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing Graham's humiliation. Headlines were already being drafted in the minds of journalists. Billionaire's wedding collapses amid secret children's scandal. Vivian's abandoned bouquet still lay crushed on the marble floor, a symbol of dreams destroyed. Graham buried his face in his hands, sobs breaking through the silence. Elena felt the sting of his regret, but she refused to waver. She had raised her children in dignity. Without his empire, she wouldn't let his guilt rewrite the past. She straightened her shoulders, gripping Ava's hand tighter, ready to lead her children away from the spectacle. A mother's resolve. Elena's voice cut through the murmurs, steady and unyielding. This ends here, Graham. You can't undo years of absence with a single plea. My children deserve stability, not promises that crumble with every board meeting. Her words silenced even the harshest whispers. Ava looked at her mother with admiration, seeing strength she hoped to carry one day. Noah and Nathan, too young to understand, clung to her with trust. Graham reached out once more, his hand trembling, but Elena stepped back. In that step, she drew the line forever between the empire he built and the family she preserved. The crowd parted instinctively as Elena gathered her children. Whispers of or replace judgment. Some guests even applauded softly, not for Graham, but for Elena's quiet dignity. She lifted her chin, walking with grace down the same aisle where Vivian had stormed minutes earlier. Ava held one hand, Noah and Nathan the other. Together, they were unshaken, a family bound by love stronger than ambition. Graham collapsed fully to his knees, tears streaming. For the first time, the empire builder found himself powerless, unable to rebuild what truly mattered. Elena's departure sealed his fate more than any business failure ever could. Graham called out desperately, his voice cracking. Elena, please, I'll give up everything. Just let me be in their lives. She paused only briefly, turning her head just enough to meet his eyes. You had your chance, Graham. You chose power over us. Now you live with that choice. Her words rang like a gavel striking the final verdict. Cameras captured the exchange. Reporters scribbled furiously. Graham's reputation wasn't just tarnished, it was destroyed. Yet the greatest wound wasn't public. It was private. He had lost the trust of the only people who could have given his life real meaning. The walk of finality. Elena stepped outside into the crisp San Francisco air, the sunlight bathing her and the children in warmth. The crowd inside still buzzed, but out here, silence reigned. Ava squeezed her mother's hand, whispering, "We're okay, Mom." Elena smiled faintly, her heart heavy but resolute. She glanced at her sons, their innocence shielding them from the chaos they'd left behind. With every step away from the cathedral, Elena carried strength, dignity, and truth. Behind her, Graham knelt broken, his empire meaningless. Ahead of her lay a future where love, not ambition, defined her children's lives, and she would protect it. Inside the cathedral, Graham remained kneeling long after Elena had left. Guests shuffled awkwardly, unsure whether to leave or linger. His groomsmen whispered, urging him to stand, but his body felt heavy, pinned by guilt. Memories of Elena's smile and Ava's first laugh tormented him, colliding with the image of Noah and Nathan calling Elena Mom. He realized every contract signed, every deal celebrated, had been meaningless. The moments he should have fought for, bedtime stories, birthdays, love, were gone. His bride was gone, his family gone. For the first time, Graham wondered if redemption was even possible. Outside, Elena held her children close, but her heart trembled. Strength didn't erase pain. She thought of the years she had spent raising them alone, the sacrifices, the lonely nights, the unanswered questions Ava asked. She thought of Graham's tears at the altar, and a tiny voice deep inside whispered that once she had loved him, but that voice was drowned by reality. She couldn't risk exposing her children to a man who had failed them before. They deserved consistency, not a second-chance balance on apologies. Elena knew walking away was the only protection she could offer them. A father's breakdown. Graham's mother approached him quietly, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. "You should have listened to her years ago," she whispered, her voice thick with sorrow. He turned to her, tears streaming. "I thought I was building something for them," he admitted. She shook her head. "You built walls, Graham, not bridges." Those words shattered him further. The guests began filing out, murmuring about headlines that would explode by morning. Alone at the altar, Graham collapsed completely, his sobs echoing against the cathedral walls. For all his brilliance, he had failed at the one role that mattered most. Meanwhile, Elena guided Ava, Noah, and Nathan toward their waiting car. Reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust forward, but she ignored them, shielding her children from flashing cameras. Ava looked up, brave beyond her years, and asked, "Mom, are we really never going back?" Elena knelt, meeting her daughter's eyes. "No, sweetheart, we're going forward, always forward." Ava nodded solemnly, holding her brothers tighter. In that moment, Elena felt an unshakable clarity. Her family wasn't broken. It was whole, strong, and complete. Graham's absence wasn't their weakness. It was their reminder that love, not ambition, builds the strongest foundation. The car pulled away slowly, leaving the cathedral shrinking in the distance. Elena gazed out the window, the sunlight streaming across her face. She remembered the day she first met Graham, the laughter they shared, the dreams they built. For a moment, sorrow pinched her heart, but then she looked at Ava resting her head against the glass, and the twins asleep on her lap. The pain softened into resolve. The past had shaped her, but it no longer defined her. She was not the abandoned wife. She was a mother who chose dignity, love, and resilience. Inside his mansion that evening, Graham sat alone, staring at untouched champagne glasses meant for celebration. His phone buzzed relentlessly with reporters, investors, and friends. He ignored them all, replaying Elena's words again and again. "You chose ambition over family." The truth was undeniable. He had sacrificed love for an empire that felt worthless without those who should have shared it. He thought of Ava's sad eyes, Noah's laugh, Nathan's tiny hands. For the first time, Graham wished he could give back every dollar, every accolade, if it meant reclaiming the years he had lost forever. The final reckoning. News outlets exploded with headlines. Billionaire groom abandoned at altar. Photos of Elena and her children leaving in dignity flooded social media. Praise as strength in the face of betrayal. Graham's empire shook as investors questioned his judgment. Vivian refused his calls, her reputation wounded by association. Alone in his office, Graham buried his face in his hands. He realized too late that empires collapse, but love endures. He had traded the eternal for the temporary, and now he was left with neither. For all his billions, he was nothing more than a man consumed by his regrets. Elena, however, settled back into life in Boston with grace. She poured her energy into her children and her research, her name celebrated in medical journals instead of gossip columns. At bedtime, Ava often whispered, "Mom, you're the strongest person I know." Elena kissed her forehead, smiling softly. Noah and Nathan grew surrounded by warmth, never lacking for love. The shadows of the wedding faded into lessons, reminders of resilience. Elena never told her children to hate their father. Instead, she taught them love, compassion, and truth. One day, they would decide what role he deserved in their hearts. In San Francisco, Graham often drove past the cathedral, staring at the doors where his life had unraveled. He wondered if Elena ever thought of him, if his children would ever call him Dad. The silence haunted him more than headlines ever could. At night, he dreamed of Noah and Nathan running into his arms, of Ava smiling proudly. But every morning, reality greeted him with emptiness. He had been a man who built skyscrapers of ambition, but forgot the foundation of love. Now he lived in ruins, haunted by the family he had once taken for granted. Elena walked Ava to school one bright morning, Noah and Nathan toddling beside her. She felt peace in her heart, knowing she had protected her children from the chaos of ambition. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest, filled with love and dignity. Back in San Francisco, Graham sat in his empty boardroom, staring out at the city he once ruled. The empire remained, but it no longer felt like victory. Elena had walked away with the true prize, a family built on love. And Graham, for all his wealth, would never recover the treasure he had lost forever.